everyone, this is Charmaine here, and welcome to another episode on Reversing on Plans. I have Galia here. You can say hi to everyone, Galia.
Hi, guys.
Awesome. It's been a while, but I'm excited to do another episode on Reversing on Plans. And today we are going to talk everything about motivation. And I wanted to talk about motivation in different stages because it's all very different from someone that is deciding to change. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the health belief model, if you guys, or if you guys are familiar with the stages of change as well. You know, that's one of the theories, but I do think that motivation is one of the biggest thing that is helpful for our clients to make sure that they're able to transform their lives, because it's not just about food itself. It's not just about exercise itself. The biggest part that we have to work on is the mindset. And so one of the things that I wanted to start off, and Galia, you can chime in if you want to, is the beginning stage where someone is deciding whether to start taking action to manage their diabetes, reverse their diabetes or not. What do you think is the biggest thing that they need to think about when they're trying to make that first step, if you may?
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever it comes to like motivation and finding motivation for like a health goal or a health outcome, I think what starts the change for people is when like the pain of staying the same, of like nothing changing, and the pain of like the change itself,
Right.
that balance shifts, right? So staying the same becomes more painful than the pain that you perceive making change to have, right? Because change is uncomfortable and we practically resist change in every sense that we can. So when staying the same, when not making any change, becomes more painful, more scary than actually having to make that change, like that's when we actually start. And I think when it comes to diabetes in specific, I think it's really about like that fear. Like it can hit you one day. It might be, you know, as simple of a moment as going to the doctor and getting your HbA1c back and you're shocked, right? Like you've been kind of managing for years or something, and then you go and it's jumped up and you are just shocked, right? Or something happens to somebody close to you and it scares you. For me recently, I had like a dip in my like journey with type 1 where I was really struggling and I basically got in a hole, and my management was absolutely terrible, like the worst that it's been in a really, really long time. And I remember sitting there and just being like, I feel like crap. Sorry. Like I felt terrible. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't live. This is not living. I can't go through life feeling like this anymore. I need to change something, even though I know it's going to be really hard, even though I know it's going to be like a hell of a journey and a process. And, you know, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be uncomfortable. Something needs to change. And I think that's where it all starts. Like when you look at your situation and you think about your future and you realize, no, like I need to start something. And that's like the initial fire that gets lit under you, right? It's like something needs to happen. I don't know what needs to happen. Like you might not know what needs to happen, but you recognize, it's like that recognition of if nothing changes, like this is what my life is going to look like, or worse, right? Or I might feel worse. So I think it's like that first phase of like acknowledging like the pain that you're experiencing, like the frustration, the hardship, recognizing that you don't want to feel that way anymore, and that you are ready to do something about it. You might not know like what you need to do yet, but you just recognize like, okay, I don't want this to continue past where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I love what you just shared about, you know, when the pain is greater than the cost of, you know, staying the same. I remember my husband shared, a excerpt that he's been reading in his book. I think it's from Tony Robbins. And, he talked about how labeling different things as pleasure, as pain is actually what drives us. For a lot of people, they may label pain as, eating healthy, working out, like that's pain because it's something that's uncomfortable, right? But they may label, staying the same, or, just being where they're at as comfort, as pleasure, maybe not pleasure, but maybe comfort, right? And that's something that, kind of allows them to stay the same. But when there's a cue of action of like, wow, like you saw, your A1C is way higher than before, or when you saw your parent had to go through something that is diabetes related, that kind of, reminds you, and it gives you that alarm where that switches, where you start labeling pain as staying the same, or not managing or reversing your diabetes, and then maybe labeling healthy eating, or managing your diabetes, reversing your type 2 diabetes as something that is pleasure. And that's where change start. And of course we'll go through different stages of change, and to kind of let our audience know what are the most important aspect when it comes to the mindset. But I do think the very beginning of what you label your mind as is something that is important to start making the change. I think something that, it's kind of cheesy, but I always ask people, right? Like, why is this a priority for you? Like, what is your why? And I think that's something that we need to think about too, because I think a lot of times, like, because I've talked to a lot of people with diabetes, it can be a day-to-day thing where they're like, all right, like, it's just kind of like a subconscious thing where they know they have diabetes, but they don't feel the pain. But when you actually sit down and write down, okay, what is my why? Like, why do I want my life to change? Then I think that's also a great exercise to propel you to start making changes in your life, if that makes sense.
100%. I think it's so important to have, even if it's like vague, right? Like it doesn't have to be ultra specific, but like what you want your life to look like, or how you want to feel. Like as simple as saying, I want to feel happy. Like I don't want to feel worried. It doesn't have to be like ultra specific just yet, but just having a thought about, what do I want my life to look like? How do I want to feel? I think it's very easy to become like a passenger of your own journey, like to not feel like you're in charge, especially when it comes to like chronic health struggles. It's so easy to feel like you're in the back seat, and like you don't know who's driving, but like you're there and your hands are up and you're flailing, like you have no idea what's going on, where you're going. But I think it's really important to just think about, where is it that you want to go, and like you can reclaim that control slowly. It doesn't have to be an overnight thing. It's so easy, especially when it comes to health goals and trying to develop motivation for ourselves and working on our mindset, to get sucked into like the micro, and to forget about the macro, like the bigger picture. Yes, the daily things are important, but it's really about doing enough stuff consistently that it's going to get you there. Like you don't have to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. None of us do it perfectly all the time. We're human, we're fallible. And I think something that's so important when you're on this kind of journey is just acknowledging that within yourself, that I don't have to do this perfectly 100% of the time. I just have to show up enough for myself. I just have to show up consistently in the best way that I can. And something that I feel very strongly about as somebody, with type 1 diabetes is like, my energy can be different on a day-to-day basis. And if I think about like time and range, like when my blood sugars are in range, that's like my battery level. That's like my energy level for the day. And, if I'm operating at like 40%, I don't have that much to give. I think that there's this narrative, especially in like the diabetes space, that like, oh, like almost like labeling ourselves as negative things, like, oh, I'm lazy, I don't have motivation. I've always struggled with motivation. But we don't recognize that a lot of the time the way that we're feeling like we don't have energy, feeling like we don't have
Mm-hmm.
motivation is actually more so like a symptom of our diabetes, of having high blood sugars, because we're operating at 40%.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How can we expect ourselves to be functioning like a 100% or 90% human being when our blood sugars are actually holding us back from being
Right.
able to give that? And if you feel like you have so much more to give, which in terms of, you know, going through life with diabetes, most of us have gone through struggle. Most of us have more to give ourselves, you know, our families, our friends, in our career. You know, if you're feeling like, you know, like, I know I have so much more to offer myself, you know, I know I have so much more to offer like my partner or my friends, then it's like, it's worth asking those hard questions, right? Like, what I said before, how do I want to feel? Because I'm not feeling it right now, you know, but how would I like to feel? And then you can kind of figure out, okay, now how can I get there? Like, what can I do to let me get there long term?
I love that. And I feel like the idea of not having to be perfect relaxes a lot of people. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people hold back from making a change, right? They're like, okay, if I have to be perfect, then let me wait till like January, because that's when the holidays are over. Or right, like they think about, oh, like then I'll wait till after I travel, or, you know, I'll wait till after like this specific meeting, right? Or this specific like gathering that I know I'm gonna like enjoy the food. And I want to emphasize to people that honestly, like these things will always happen. You always have Christmas and Thanksgiving. You'll always travel. And so really the best time is now, because now you gain the tools on how to navigate all of these different things in life, and knowing that it's a lifestyle and it's not perfect. And that's why I think a lot of times, right, with our diet industry, it tells us, yeah, you have to be on this like perfect 10-week plan, and you know it's gonna like help you lose like 20 pounds, or you're gonna be, you know, perfect. And then there's like a cheat day, and even the cheat day itself, it's like saying that it's bad. It's not. Like we call it flexible meals because you can't be flexible in life, right? And so I think a lot of times it's that idea of perfection that, you know, holds people back, if that makes sense. And once you're able to know that, okay, you don't have to be perfect, that's something that can, you know, start letting yourself know, okay, like let me just be better at one step at a time. And I love what you shared about the blood sugar, because I feel like that is one of the biggest thing that I always tell people, like reversing type 2 diabetes or managing type 1 diabetes is all about getting your life back, right? Like getting your energy back. And you have so much more to give when you're able to, you know, have it under control and not have to worry about it anymore, right? And so yeah, did you want to add to
100%? No, I was just going to say it's about that peace of mind, right? And like the expectation of like what we just said of being perfect is it's just not like real life, you know? And just what you said, even people in the program, like community members in the Reversing Diabetes program, they'll say to me sometimes, oh, you know, Galia, like I'm traveling in a couple of weeks. I'm like, okay, awesome, like let's practice together, because it's a normal part of your life. You're gonna go on holiday, there's gonna be anniversaries, there's gonna be birthdays, you know, Christmas is gonna come every year. Like, it's so much more important for us to learn how to navigate these moments together, because you want to be able to enjoy this as a part of your life, because it is a part of like a normal, healthy and balanced life. So better to get the practice in now, you know, when we can do that together, navigate that together. And then everything that you do, everything that you achieve, you're prepared for when this happens again, because it will. As opposed to so many, like my frustration with like the health and fitness space is like sometimes I feel like my head is gonna erupt, you know, like it's gonna explode. But you know, like these like cookie cutter programs and ideas of, you know, do this, like eat these meals and like you'll lose this amount of weight. It's like, okay, what happens when I stop eating those meals? Like, you know how to like navigate real life, you know, do you know how to put these things together for yourself? So I think it's really thinking about like the long term, not just like the end result, like or the like numerical goal that you might have, whether it be like weight loss, or I want my A1C to drop by, you know, 2%, 3% or whatever. but thinking about, okay, but like, how am I going to do that? You know, like, what is the journey for me to do that? And is that a journey that is actually going to be good for me?
Right.
Like, not just on a physical level, like health wise and being able to maintain that, but psychologically as well, because this is a very emotional and mental experience. Anybody with a chronic health issue, like, there is, you know, a psychological element here. Like, there's social stigma, you know, there's how we feel about ourselves, like on a personal and individual level. It's tiring. You know, managing your own health can be tiring. It requires conscious thought, effort, energy. So I feel like really also focusing on looking after ourselves on an emotional level, and having that, like, practicing self-compassion with ourselves throughout the process. You know, I had a doctor's appointment today, and I went to see my mum and my aunt and have lunch with them. And it wasn't what I would normally eat. And I was on the fence about things, thinking like, should I, you know, have lunch with them? Should I not? And then I just said, Galia, go ahead, enjoy lunch with them. Like, the value of, you know, the interaction and what it meant to me that one time, it's not going to stop me from like being on this journey towards better health. But what it is going to do, it's going to re-energize me, like, mentally, and create more momentum and energy for me to put into like the journey that I'm on. So I think, like, to really like hammer home, like, it's not about being perfect. Like, nobody expects you to be perfect. Real life is not perfect. You know, life is chaotic. And learning how to navigate that chaos, like, with grace towards yourself, and patience, I think is so important in the long term of going through this experience, like reclaiming, you know, your mental, physical, emotional well-being.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, this is something that I always see in people that are successful in, you know, no matter if it's managing their type 1 or, you know, reversing their type 2 diabetes. I always notice that they're always positive, even from the very, you know, beginning. And maybe they, you know, have times when they're doubtful. Maybe they have times when they're like apprehensive about something. But I think it's always about feeling good. It's as superficial as that sounds, but, you know, it's about feeling good about this journey. And one thing that I always, you know, and this kind of brings us into the middle part, where when someone is on this journey changing their lifestyle, it's also important to understand that this is about learning the tools. This isn't about, you know, like we said, being perfect. But I also like to tell people that this is not, when we help people, we don't just, all right, like, here's 3 months of menu plan and that's it. You know, I always tell people we aim to make them the expert of reversing diabetes, that they can do this themselves for the rest of their lives. And I think that's also the thing, is knowing that, okay, like, I'm learning all these different things. I'm learning things about my body that I haven't learned before. And I think that's also the key of knowing that you're a student and you don't have to like execute things perfectly. And so I think that's something that I always, or if Kara, our other coach in the program, she always says, you know, have a scientific mindset, right? Like, be the observer of your body. And instead of feeling, you know, guilty about, oh, like, I had, you know, this McDonald's meal, or, you know, things like that. And just really being able to see that, okay, like, it's something that you'll be able to enjoy, or even increase your body's quota of having more fun. I know you talked about that in the past, right? Like, when you work on the insulin sensitivity, you'll be able to have more quota to have other foods and be more flexible, right? And so that's something that, you know, I always emphasize to people while they're, you know, on this journey of reversing their diabetes.
No, for sure. And something my husband actually like tells me every day, because I'm very analytical in nature and I'm very like data driven. So I treat my like type 1 management like a science experiment. Like, I'm always looking at the numbers and trying to understand as much as I can. And he'll always tell me, you know, don't focus on the outcome alone. Focus on like the journey to whatever outcome. Because if I'm just looking at the numbers, instead of focusing on the learning process behind what the numbers mean, right? Like I'll put it into context in a scenario. If I have a meal and I'm trying to determine, how much insulin do I need for this meal? And I make a mistake and my blood sugars go up. If I'm only focusing on the fact that my blood sugars are going up, I'm going to be pissed off because it's important to me to be able to effectively manage my diabetes, because I know it translates into my energy bar, right? My time and range, like the energy that I have to give to myself, to my work, my family. So if I'm just focusing on that outcome, I'm going to be vexed. I'm going to get angry, and I'm going to get angry probably towards myself, just counterproductive. It's not a positive environment for me to be in. If I focus on the process, the journey, not just the outcome, I can say, okay, so that didn't work this time. I know better now for next time. I know that I need a bit more insulin, probably around this much based on where my numbers went to. And now I have useful information. I've made a scenario that would have otherwise been frustrating, beneficial to myself, because I've taken something from it that I can act on, right? And so I think as long as we're present in the journey and we're making sure to actively learn as much as we can from every single situation, the outcome is guaranteed. Just because you're not focusing on it and you're being present in the journey and you're learning, and it feels great. Like it feels great to go through hardship, right? This is how we build resilience, right? To go through, trials and to be able to take something away from it that we know is going to benefit us, right? And so I know it's the same for you. I know that you always highlight this to people in the program, but like just being present and learning as much as you can day in and day out, it can be so small. Like there is an infinite number of opportunities to learn something every single day, and if you just capitalize on one of them, one thing from the infinite possibilities, you can become 1% better for the next day. And if you do that 10 days in a row, you're 10% better off, right? And I think it's just really focusing on, even if I just have a small takeaway, that's going to allow me to build this momentum that in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to look back and I'm not going to recognize, like how I got here, because I've just been present with myself, present throughout the process, trying to create as much positivity for myself, as many learning opportunities that are going to, push me forwards. And I think people with diabetes, whether you have type 1 or type 2 or type 1.5 or gestational diabetes, like whatever it is, there are so many opportunities to build this like resiliency, because we're very, very challenged every day. Like we are faced with challenges, difficulties, but every single difficulty is an opportunity to learn and get better. It's just sometimes we feel so overwhelmed that it's like we have glasses on and they're like blurred, like we can't see those opportunities, right? But really just looking for them. And it could be something so simple, like I said, as eating out, noticing that your sugar spiked and thinking, okay, how can I mitigate that for next time? I can still enjoy myself, but maybe I add, I don't know, like I drink more water. Maybe I go for a walk afterwards. Like maybe I have like a side of veggies, like to help my body metabolize that better. Like there are so many things that we can do, and like you just have to act on one of them to get started, and you'll feel so proud of yourself. You'll look at yourself and be like, damn, like I did that. Like I noticed that and I acted on it, and you'll feel so good. You'll feel so good with yourself, about yourself, that you'll want to do it again. And you'll keep doing it because it feels good. And then all of a sudden you're like, I've become this motivated person because it feels good to do this for myself. It's just about doing it that one time to get that feeling. And if you can do it that one time, then it can take care of itself.
Yeah, I love that. And, something that I love what you mentioned is about enjoying the process and not seeing it as a bad thing. And I always believe this, there is no such thing as a bad or a good thing, especially when it comes to health. I think a lot of times, yes, you can see it as a bad thing, but you can also see it as a good thing, right? Like, for example, and this is nothing to do with diabetes, but Galia knows that for a long time, like my skin was like very reactive, and I was like, my skin was peeling. I was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening to me? And I was also traveling. I couldn't make videos. And I think that's the biggest part, because like I'm on social media all the time. And like sometimes I get really self-conscious, like if my skin isn't doing good. And so I think for a while I was like, dang it, like why is my skin like that? And this is frustrating because it's affecting my work, right? But I started thinking like, no, like I should be grateful that my skin is sensitive, because it tells me that what I should or shouldn't use, right? Like I shouldn't use all these like vitamin C that, everyone it's good for other people's skin, but it's not good for my skin. So I think it's a way of my body telling me like, no, like I don't like this. This is not good for me. This is just not right for me, right? And so I think when I start to have a different perspective and start being grateful for those like warning signs, right, for those peeling skins that I have, right, then I start being able to have a different perspective. Okay, like I'm grateful. Now I know that I can only use this one and I won't, have a reaction if I use this cream, and I know what will work for me and what won't work for me. And it's the same thing when it comes to diabetes, is just knowing, okay, well, your body's telling you it doesn't like this, and, be grateful for that. Be grateful for those warning signs instead of being anxious or scared about it. Just, be grateful. And there's always a solution. And that's something that I always tell people. And that's why I really feel like, we have 100% success in helping you manage your blood sugar, is because we're able to, figure out that, okay, if this doesn't work for you, there's also another way. As long as you're willing to work with us, as long as you're willing to go through, the process with us, we'll be able to help you find a solution. If you're not, if you're just like, all right, I give up, then yeah, like there is no way, then there is no way that we can, help you be successful. But I have 100% confidence that we can always help you find a solution, as long as you're willing, if that makes sense. Yeah.
100%. I always I was having a conversation with a group of type 1 friends. I'm trying to like immerse myself more in like the type 1 community, because it's so nurturing and it's so amazing to, to speak with people who just get it and their frustrations. And we were having a conversation about like, what is your relationship with like failure, right? Like we asked this question and we talked about it a lot. Like, what does failure look like to you? Like, what would you say failure is? It's like, oh, my blood sugar went up, or I didn't like pre-bolus for a meal, or like stuff like that. And we kind of came to this place where we all collectively felt like, well, there is no such thing as failure. Like you can fall, and we will all fall in a journey. But it's really just about like picking yourself up and asking like, okay, why did that happen? And like, how can I be better prepared for the next time so that I don't fall? And the only way that we can fail is if we stop trying, right? But the reality is, if we keep on trying, like you will get there. You just have to keep trying. And if something doesn't work, try something different. Like don't try the same thing if it's not working for you. We are all different. These like approaches of just eat these 5 meals and like you'll be okay, like that's not going to work for everyone. It's not realistic. Or like, for example, in exercise, like do this training plan and like you'll get a 6-pack. Crazy claims. It's not going to work for everyone. And if you notice something isn't working for you, and like you visualize like where you want to be and how you want to feel, try something different. But keep trying, and that way you will learn so much throughout the process. I did not know anything about diabetes when I was diagnosed. I was like, what's diabetes? I've never heard of it. I didn't know anyone with type 1. I didn't know what type 1 was. There was a section about type 1 diabetes that was like 4 sentences long in like my biology textbook in high school. And like I read those 4 sentences. I'm like, well, that's like nothing to go on. Right. The reason that I learned and like the reason that I'm here today is I kept trying. Like when things weren't working, when my sugars were bad, or I found myself in a bad place, I was like, okay, cool, I don't like this. I'm gonna figure out what I can do to get me out of this place. And
Mm-hmm.
if the thing that I'm trying like isn't working, I'm going to try something else, but I'm going to keep on trying.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sit with yourself at the end of the day with that knowing of, I know I'm doing everything I can. Whatever I have to give that day, like I said, my energy bar, my time and range, like if I'm not in a good place, might be low. And if the best that I can do on that day is like walking my dog and like making my bed and like having breakfast 3 hours later, that's the best that I can do. That's my equivalent of 100%. And like you have to give yourself that credit for keeping on, you know, like keep going on. Sorry, I can't speak today.
Yeah.
But you have to give yourself that credit for the time and the energy that you put in. We're so good at like nitpicking on, you know, I could have done this better, or I should have done this, instead of sitting with ourselves and being like, damn, you know what, I'm so proud that I did this one thing today, and like that's enough me going forward, like that I gave myself that acknowledgement of that was a great thing to do. I might not have done that a couple of weeks ago, but I did it today, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the question about, you know, your relationship with failure. And I love that, you know, so you guys came up with, you know, there is no failure. It's just falling. And it reminds me of a podcast I was listening to. And he talked about, I think the author was talking about how it was a book, and then his author was talking about how he saw his daughter, like, you know, trying to learn how to walk, and, you know, she just kept like falling and falling. And at first, like when, you know, she was falling, he would get scared because he doesn't want her to like feel sad or like feel, you know, like that she's not good enough and things like that. But what he observed that, you know, his 1 or 2 year old daughter is that she'll fall, but she'll laugh and she'll get back up. And then she'll fall and she'll laugh and get back up. And basically the point is, a lot of times these associated feelings with falling or, you know, failure is something that we add after, right? Like when we're like a kid, when we're like a child, we just see that, all right, like that was funny that, you know, I fell, like, let me get back up again and let me try again, right? But when we are growing up, we have a lot of, you know, negative associations with falling, and we think it's not good, and we start associating our self-worth with it, right? And I think that's where it gets, you know, muddy, and that's where, you know, it gets kind of, you know, disappointing whenever you know, try something and it doesn't work. But when you're able to have that childlike heart of like, it's okay, I fall, you know, let me just try something new, let me just practice more. And I think that's something that is helpful. And one thing that I do want to talk about is, you know, maybe the later maintaining stage of, you know, this lifestyle. What is the mindset? What should the mindset be when it comes to maintaining this lifestyle and being able to keep it going? What do you think, Alia?
Yeah. I feel like a huge part of it is like creating an environment for yourself that's going to ensure like your continued trajectory, right? Like I ask myself this question a lot. Like I journal on it like every single week. And the question is, what is the like noise in my life right now? Like what are the things that's like clouding my vision, right? That's like taking me away from like the path that I want to be on. And how can I like turn down that noise, right? If it's like, I don't know, like certain stressors. For me, I'm like a very big emotional eater. Like that's like my Achilles heel. That's where I fall the most often, is emotional eating. If I allow for myself to get in a very like heightened emotional state, like that's what I've always done for comfort. Like I turn to food. And me asking myself that question, like for me personally, right, of what is the unwanted noise? Like what is adding too much stress in my life that doesn't need to be there? Let me like remove that so I can have that energy to focus on where I'm at. Asking myself every day, you know, what would my future self do differently from what I'm doing right now? So I can keep thinking about, okay, this is like my long-term goal for myself. This is how I want to feel. This is what I want my life to look like. And I'm on a journey there, right? Like the journey doesn't end. The goal is constantly evolving for everyone, you know?
Yeah.
And asking myself, you know, what can I do to ensure that I'm continuing to move forwards? Because you don't want to get like complacent with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to get to a point where you're like, you know, I've got this in the bag.
Right.
Like, I'm good. And then you feel yourself slipping. I think asking yourself these questions, being real with yourself, being kind towards yourself, like constantly reminding yourself that it's not about being perfect. You know, you don't have to be perfect, but it's about consistently showing up.
Yeah.
And creating an environment, a situation where it's easy for you to consistently show up for yourself. You know, I don't choose friendships that are not in keeping with how I want to live my life, because it's going to, I'm a people pleaser. You know, if I go out with people and, you know, they have different goals than I do, I'm going to be swayed, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to get down on myself. So I don't want to put myself in situations that I don't want to be in. If you want to be in those situations, that's a different story. But I think just asking yourself constantly, like, what is it that I want? Why is it important to me?
Yeah.
Like, how can I continue to show up for myself? How can I make it easy for me to show, or as easy as can be for me to show up for myself? And like investing in that journey. Like when I started, I used to hate exercise. I became a personal trainer. Like, it's a weird journey to be on.
Right.
But I hated exercise. I was made fun of because if the bus was coming and I was going to miss the bus, I still wouldn't run for it. I'd be like, I'll wait 30 minutes. Because I was so anti. I was like, you can't pay me to be active. And then the way that I started to get myself into it was I invested in that journey for myself. I made it fun for myself. Like, I got myself gym clothes that I could feel good in, that made it easier for me to go to the gym because I felt cute. You know, I would get myself foods that I could be excited about eating to make it easier to kind of be healthy, like what healthy is to me individually. You know, I invested in like my diabetes management, like getting myself a CGM because that was important to me. So I think like when you invest in yourself in that way and in your healthcare journey, like you can make it fun. And if you keep asking yourself those questions that, you know, I was listing about, like, how would your future self show up differently? And you just try to like emulate what that, like throw your avatar forward, like in We, you know, like when you hang the person, like throw them forward.
Yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about.
They'll like land in like your future state. And try to emulate that. Like, think about, how can I emulate that person that I want to be? And like keep asking yourself that so you keep doing it. Like, don't just get to a point where you think I've arrived, like I'm done, because then you fall off. Like, it's a constant process of like self-work and self-love, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love that. And, you know, one thing that I really took from what you said was being able to be the person that you want to be and just to start embodying that, you know. And one thing that I do think is also helpful, I know we talked a lot about like what the mindset will be and things like that, but I really do think scheduling time to work on your mindset is also really important, because we can talk about this all day, but if you don't take time to sit down and really think, okay, what is clouding your thoughts? Like, or what is your goal? Who do you want to be? If you don't take time to actually think about that, it's going to be hard. And so I think one practical I think will be really helpful for those of you who are listening is, I think in the morning is the best, but if you don't have morning time, if you only have nighttime, you know, schedule 30 minutes or an hour just to write down, okay, like what are the things that are clouding in the moment? What are the things that you can cut out? And what are the things that you really want? And, you know, who do you want to be? And start thinking about that. And I always tell people, you know, start journaling what it's going to be like once you're able to reverse type 2 diabetes, or once you're able to not have to worry about managing this. I mean, managing it's, you know, something that you'll do, right? But when we don't have to like constantly worry about this anymore, like what is life going to look like, so that you'll be able to do this for the rest of your life and be able to, have a clearer mindset. So I think scheduling something practical is also really important as well.
I totally agree. And like, I'll add like onto that something that like I did recently, and I feel like it's really helped me like manifest myself into who I'm wanting to become, and it's helping me get there, is if you think about your future self, like if you think about who you want to be, what you want your life to look like, describe that person in like 3 words, right? So for me, I want to be reliable to everyone in my life, like people I work with, my family, my friends. I want people to know like, I've got you. You know, I want to be that person. Resilient. I pride myself on like my growth, right? I want to keep getting better. I don't want to get to a point where like I think I'm the smartest in the room and I'm perfect. That sounds so boring. Like I want to keep trying to get better at everything that I possibly can. And I don't want to feel like I'm ever failing. I'm happy to fall, but I never want to quit at anything.
Yeah.
And forgiving. I want to be forgiving, like towards myself, kind towards myself, because life isn't easy. I want to be kind towards other people because like the world needs more kindness. But if you think about like 3 words that describe the person that you want to be, and you have them in the forefront of your mind every day, I'm thinking about how can I emulate like those adjectives?
Yeah.
Like what can I do to embody like who this person I'm wanting to be like is described as, and then leading like with those words, like in our actions, in how we show up for ourselves, for our family, friends, as a co-worker, but yeah, that's what I would encourage everybody, anyone who's listening, like to sit down and all of the questions that we've like said and the stuff that we've gone over, to like schedule the time, like Charmaine said, to work on your mindset. Ask yourself these questions and write them down, because if you don't write them down, you're gonna lose it, right? Like it's not gonna really stick, it's not gonna be there. But literally writing out these questions and writing out responses for yourself and asking yourself those questions as often as you can, you'll see like an evolution in the responses. Like you'll see that what you want changes, how you want to show up for yourself changes. And writing it down keeps you accountable to it. Because it's not just in your head. It's not just, oh, I thought about it, but you've literally put it on a piece of paper that you can look back at, that you can refer to, and hopefully you get weeks, months, years down the line, and you can look back at that and be like, damn, like I did it. Like I became that person, I showed up for myself. I became, resilient. I became reliable, I became forgiving, like whatever it is that you want to become. You get to have that moment of like, damn, like I did it. Now what? What's the next goal? Like, how do I get that? But it's just about like continuing to show up for yourself, like at the end of the day, and being real with yourself about those questions and those answers.
I love that. I love that. It's always about, improving yourself and, being the best version of yourself. And, I hope that people that are listening, can really get a gist of, when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes or managing type 1 diabetes, in this journey, it's really about being, a better version of yourself, but also being able to live life to the full, and your body is a vessel. What we're doing here is really just to help you be able to kind of clean up your vessel and be able to allow you to do many more things in life, whatever you're good at and whatever you're passionate about. So I think that's what's great. And let us know if you want more of these episodes on motivation and mindset. I think we definitely both enjoy talking about it a lot, because we do really believe that this is just one of the most important things when it comes to health. So thank you so much for listening. Galia is our coach in our Reversing Diabetes program, and I'm also one of the coaches as well, obviously. But we love helping people be able to reverse their type 2 diabetes. So if you are interested in knowing about what we do, how we help people reverse type 2 diabetes, you can watch the free training. And if you're interested in working with us, you can always book a call with us. We love you guys a lot. Thank you so much for listening in or watching if you're on YouTube, and we will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one, everyone.